Saskatchewan is the latest province to declare a state of emergency, as quickly moving wildfires have forced thousands of people in that province, as well as Manitoba and Alberta, to evacuate their homes and communities. The strength and severity of the wildfires so early in the season is prompting many questions about the level of national preparedness and resources available in Canada. For years, the Canadian Association of Canadian Fire Chiefs has been calling for a national fire administration. Joining us now is Paul Boissonneault. He's a board member with the association and fire chief of the Oakville, Ontario Fire Department. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, happy to have you. So first of all, Paul, what can you tell us about the current wildfire situation across Canada?
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, first and foremost, I want to offer our thoughts and prayers, obviously, with the evacuees in Alberta, Manitoba, and recently Saskatchewan. We know multiple provinces now are in a state of emergency. We send also our regrets and condolences to the family and friends of the deceased in Manitoba. There has been firefighter injuries as well, and I want to send my support to all of my colleagues on the front line who are battling these wildland-urban interface fires as well as the wildfires. You know, the state of fires across this country right now is we have over 182 active fires to date, as of today's date. We've had over 1,600 fires already this year and over 1.4 million hectares burned thus far. 93 fires are out of control. And so the issue that we're facing right now is every province is dealing with wildfires at this point. So if you were to look at the interactive map for the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center, you know, it's a very bleak picture across this country as far as the number of fires that are out of control. And we're also talking about fires that are not solely in remote areas. We're not talking about these are, you know, natural phenomenon and part of our ecosystem that happens every year. We're talking about areas that are, you know, impinging upon communities and towns and cities where we're dealing with wildland urban interface fires. And that's where that intersection of provincial wildfire agencies and then local jurisdictional fire departments where they meet, because that challenge is getting the right resources to the right place at the right time. And that intersection of, you know, good information, policy, and expertise. And that's where a National Fire Administration is so imperative to ensure that we have policy meeting response at the right place.
Now, in terms of the national resources available and needed to deal with wildfires, how would you characterize the moment right now?
Well, I think that the challenge that we're facing is the fact that, you know, each province cannot necessarily help their neighbor because their own provincial wildfire agencies are dealing with their own fires. So the ability to simply send resources from, say, Manitoba next door to Saskatchewan or vice versa is that they're dealing with, they're all hands on deck associated with what they have on their plates. Now, when you deal with the wildland urban interface fires, you've got local jurisdictional fire departments as the authority having jurisdiction in those areas, and they're now meeting, you know, the provincial wildfire agencies, and that's where the coordination of resources nationally, that's where it's imperative that a National Fire Administration would deal with it. We're not only talking about the resources solely in firefighting, we're talking about, you know, third-party agencies support, talking about, you know, humane societies, food banks, industry, and that coordination. The individuals on the front line, they already have enough on their plate as far as what's happening. There needs to be federal support to ensure that we can get all of the resources across this country from coast to coast to coast. We have a turnkey solution. We've been talking about this now for multiple years. We have the ability to have this done even before the G7 meetings for our government, and it's almost sad to think that of the G7 countries, we are the only country that does not have a National Fire Administration, and Canada is burning. We have talked about the wildfires. You know, the terminology is unprecedented. It can't be used anymore. We've been flagging 23, 24, and 25 as significant wildfire seasons, and we're seeing it yet again. And we say it's early, but it's really not early in comparison to the other years. This was predictable. So we need to act on this. We can't keep hoping that Mother Nature is simply going to change or that climate emergencies are going to lessen. This has become a reality, and we need to ensure that we're prepared.
Now, the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs has been lobbying for a long time for a national fire administration. Why do you think it is so hard for your organization to convince policymakers to be more proactive rather than reactive on fire safety?
So we're very hopeful that with the new government in place and we're dealing with new ministers associated with emergency preparedness as well as public safety, we're hopeful that we can certainly get our points across. We've met with many parliamentarians, and there isn't necessarily opposition against it. I think part of the challenge is that maybe it's they're trying too hard to analyze, different models in search of perfection. We have provided the turnkey solution. We have done so based upon not only our own lessons learned from major emergencies across this country, but we have been in contact with agencies that have had national fire administrations from other countries internationally for many years. And so we feel that we have a model that can be implemented, can be effective, and certainly just like anything else that initiates, it becomes a living mechanism that can be changed and altered as necessary. But to not have it put in place, to not have that body providing that information, expertise, and policy at an intersection is essentially really creating a problem here in Canada. The Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs, we're working very hard with our colleagues on the ground. We're trying to coordinate resources such as, creating agreements with humane societies. We're assisting with, we've signed an agreement with the Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association because 90,000 firefighters across this country are volunteer. And certainly it becomes taxing on those individuals who hold other jobs but are still caring about the safety of Canadians, not only in their community, but when deployed in remote areas. And so we need to support them who are supporting us.
Well, thanks for your time this morning, Paul, and please stay safe.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity.
That's Paul Boissonneault. He is a board member of the Canadian Association of Fire Chiefs and fire chief of the town of Oakville, Ontario.